Information Technology from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. His work sits out at the intersection of clinical data, genomics, and emerging technology. Precious has contributed to projects leading to institutions such as Baylor College of Medicine and Guardant Health, where he supported research on targeted therapies, cancer diagnostics, and health data integration. His expertise lies in translating complex bioinformatics insight into actionable clinical tools using health IT infrastructures like electronics health records and so I think there's a break somewhere, so I'm going to start all over. I'm getting information from outside here that they weren't hearing me, so I will start all over. I should clear my throat, right? Faculty of Pharmaceutical Sciences at University of Jos, the Deputy Dean, the heads of departments, professors, colleagues, students, all participants from across the country and in the diaspora to this continuous professional development program. To the program of today. Before us today is Precious Adeniyi, and like I said earlier on, it's a privilege to us to have him come to speak to us in the area that he's well versed. And he's based in the US, is health information and bioinformatics professional with a focus on applying artificial intelligence and digital health technologies to advanced precision oncology. That is the area of expertise of Precious. He has academic training, excuse me. He has academic training in bioinformatics and a master's in health information technology from University of Maryland at Baltimore County. He works at different times and his work crosses the clinical data, genomics, and emerging technologies. Precious has contributed to projects Baylor College of Medicine, where he supported research on targeted therapy, cancer diagnostics, and health data integration. The expertise of Precious lies in translating complex bioinformatic insight into actionable clinical tools using information technology infrastructures like the electronic health records and clinical decision support systems. He's a member of the Healthcare Information and Management System Society in the US, further anchoring his commitment to global digital health standards and innovation. And so today we are here to listen to Precious sharing, his expertise with us. Precious is passionate about bringing scientific innovations and public health equity, especially in resource limited settings like Nigeria. His work advocates for scalable AI-enabled framework that can be transformed in drug delivery. So through his consulting and public engagement, Precious has actually done a lot, bridging the gaps in this area that he wants to speak to us today on. And I'm happy to introduce Precious Adeniyi, who is our guest speaker for today. Thank you very much for everyone of us who has turned up and who is participating in this. I believe that you will gain so much from this interaction this afternoon or this morning or this time, wherever you are. Precious, over to you. Precious, over to you.
Hi, okay, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Great. Thank you so much, Professor, for that great intro. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Precious Adeniyi. Just give me a second. Let me share my screen. Great. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Not
yet. Can I get a confirmation if you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here.
Not yet.
Oh, not yet? Oh.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Precious Adeniyi. I will be discussing this topic, bridging bioinformatics, health informatics, and AI, transforming drug discovery and precision medicine in pharmacy. Before we get right into it, I'd like to give a brief intro on myself. So like I mentioned, my name is Precious Adeniyi. I am a health informatician and a bioinformatician, and also a member of HIMSS, which is a global health information management systems professional organization where we advocate for the use of technology in improving healthcare systems around the world. I'm extremely passionate about technology and also the use of data to improve healthcare in general, which is why I am a health informatician. I got my bachelor's and my master's at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, also known as UMBC. So you might hear me abbreviate as UMBC, but that's what I mean, because I'm used to calling it UMBC. I also run Clever Informatics. It's a life sciences blog where I discuss healthcare, health tech, and biotech innovations. And I'm really just very passionate about that space. So before I go too deeply, I'd like to talk about some of the, I guess, my relevant experiences in this space. During my time at UMBC, I was privileged to be involved in a diverse array of experiences, both on and off campus, where I was able to work as an undergraduate research fellow at Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, Texas, which is one of the leading research and biomedical research and medical schools in the US. And I had amazing projects there. My first project was a bioinformatics project with the Lichtarge Lab, where I focused on understanding the how I'm building a model for improving predictions for breast cancer. And this was part of a much bigger project with my mentor, Dr. Lichtarge. Another project I had with another lab another year was understanding the genetic predispositions to severe childhood malnutrition. This project was extremely eye-opening for me as a person because, so give me a sec, let me mute this. For me as a person, because I was extremely passionate about, like diseases that affect people that look like me. And so learning that, severe childhood malnutrition also has, like genetic predispositions was something interesting to me. I always thought it was just due to lack of resources like food, but learning that, people could also be predisposed to it was an eye-opening experience for me. Also worked as a bioinformatics analyst with Guardant Health. And Guardant Health is a leading precision oncology company, and they're changing the game in cancer care. They are one of the forerunners of liquid biopsies, which basically is a non-invasive method of biopsies. And a lot of my work there focused on modularizing scripts to improve the efficiency and speed of the bioinformatics pipelines I was working with. And also ensuring that the data that was being sent to oncologists were formatted in a digestible way. And so you might ask, why am I here? Great, cool story, Precious. Like, I'm a pharmacist, right? What does health informatics or bioinformatics or even AI have to do with me? I hear AI wants to take my job, so why am I here? But I'm here to say that we're here because we all need each other, right? One of my favorite games growing up was jigsaw puzzles. I love to play puzzles and play with puzzles. I love to piece them together. The regardless of how the pieces looked, whether they were small pieces or large pieces or oddly shaped, they all fit together to form this cohesive, bigger picture. And so that's the way I see this space. We all need to work together. It's a multidisciplinary solution, right, to solving the challenges. And we have one single purpose, which is better care. Another reason why this topic is very crucial right now is because we're in a digital world right now. We're experiencing technology or the powers of technology across all industries, especially in pharmacy. And so we can't sit on the sidelines. We have to begin to think of the ways we can work together to harness the powers of technology to improve the care. So also very important to note that whether that's with regards to Nigeria, it's important that we learn to start harnessing this technology so that we're able to lead in the space. We can change the way that pharmacy is practiced and administered on the continent. Which brings me to our fictional character today, and you will hear me refer to her a lot, Chika. Everyone say hello to Chika. Chika is a 34-year-old woman who lives in Kano. Unfortunately, Chika was diagnosed with early-stage lung cancer. The major challenge right now is her lung cancer is progressing despite despite receiving treatment. She was fortunate enough for the cancer to be detected at an early stage, but unfortunately, it's been progressing because the treatment isn't working for her. Her doctor suspects a genetic mutation might be driving the treatment resistance, but she doesn't have access to genetic testing, right? Because it's extremely expensive and it's extremely rare where she lives. And so the science exists, but unfortunately, the infrastructure to utilize this science doesn't. Which is why like a lot of cases like this go with similar results to Chika, where these patients are on treatment and the treatment doesn't work for them because the insights are there, but they're not able to harness the science to build a system of treatment that is tailored specifically to them. So this is where pharmacy's role must evolve, not just dispensing drugs, but helping connect the dots between lab and life, right? So bringing what's in the back end, and you hear me use those terms, I'll talk more about that, to the forefront to make those decisions. So the science exists, we have genomic testing, the tools exist, we have EHRs, and you hear me talk about them, but the system failed to connect them, and that's the problem. So Chika's story is not an outlier, it's a symptom of a much larger problem. And so, like I mentioned earlier, Chika's story reminds us that scientific breakthroughs exist, right? Like identifying biomarkers that can be implicated in the process, but they're only a part of the puzzle. The bigger we need the bigger infrastructure to be able to piece together all the pieces, right, to deliver insights at the point of care, so that the patients are not left behind. Our pipeline continues to remain fragmented. Bioinformatics may be able to identify the target, health informatics might be able to hold the data, and AI might be able to generate the insights, right? But without integration, we're unable to deliver the solutions at the point of care when the patient needs them. And another very important fact to note, and this is something you hear me speak about throughout my presentation, is as many of you know, Africa has the largest genetic diversity in the world, but we contribute less than 2% of genomic data, right, to the genomic data set, which is unfortunate because drugs are being created that aren't tailored for us. And this poses a challenge because for patients like Chika, they're unable to get tailored treatment. And before I go too deeply, I would like to first start by discussing our first three pillars, so bioinformatics, health informatics, and AI. In this section, I'll just be giving a brief overview so that everyone is basically on the same page and everyone has an understanding of what each of these pillars are. So I'll start with bioinformatics. This is my space. It's basically an interdisciplinary life science, field that utilizes mathematics, statistics, computer science, chemistry, and computational biology, and the whole and biology in general. And the whole purpose of bioinformatics is to apply computational tools to understanding biological and genetic data. And this is a very crucial part of a very burgeoning field and a very crucial parts of R&D in general. And so pharmacogenomics, which I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with, deals with the study of how of drug gene interactions, basically. So how a person's genetic makeup affects, the drugs they taking and how it works in the body. And so bioinformatics is a very crucial part of this, as it supplies the tools that are necessary for you to have this understanding. And I'll talk a little more about these tools in the future slide. So, but turning these discoveries into bedside decision requires something more. It requires a system that connects data to practice. So we can have these genomic insights, these pharmacogenomic insights, but it's important that we're able to utilize these insights, at the point of care. So like when the patient has met with their pharmacists or their physicians. And for us to be able to utilize this, health informatics is the solution, right? Health informatics ensures that the right data is, so like clinical data, genomic data, behavioral data comes together to inform smarter prescribing and safer care decisions. It's more concerned with building of tools and systems that allow for the data, the insights that we've gathered to be used at the point of care, where the physicians and the pharmacists have access to. And health informatics is made up of these three core components. So we have the electronic health records, also called EHR. You'll probably hear me refer to it as EHR, but whenever you hear that, just I'm referring to the electronic health record. And so this is a live digital repertoire of data. It contains a lot of data, so it comes from various streams: clinical genomic data, pharmacogenomic data, like health data, patient history, all types of data. We also have clinical decision support systems, also known as CDSS or CDS, and these are basically the tools for allowing us to understand what this data is. And so it makes recommendations based on the data that is stored in the electronic health record. So you can think of this like, as a pharmacist, you have access to the patient's medical history. You have access to the medications they're currently taking. And this informs the decisions you make to avoid drug-drug interactions or drug-gene interactions in the case of pharmacogenomic data. And we have interoperability standards. This is very crucial for a system if you want the system to work. I read an article years ago that basically said that scientists are unable to work together because we're also specialized in our fields, that we don't know how to communicate with each other. And so terminologies that are familiar with pharmacists may not be familiar with physicians or familiar with bioinformaticians. And this poses a problem. If our number one goal is to improve the lives and improve healthcare in general, we must speak in one language. And that's where interoperability standards comes in. We have to be able to come up with codes that are universal, right? That are uniform across all fields. So we can build these solutions together, from our own perspectives, bringing in our own unique skill sets to the table. And one of the more popular interoperability standards are FHIR HL7. This is very health informatics heavy. And so this is very relevant because as a pharmacist, as I mentioned, you want to be able to have a better understanding of the patient's entire medical history. You want to know what exactly they're taking. You want to know what they're allergic to, just so that there won't be any adverse reactions to the medications that are being prescribed. And moving on to AI. AI is what powers all of this. AI is not here to replace pharmacists. I know like there's a lot of conversation about what AI is and how AI is transforming our lives as we know it. I know every facet of life is being transformed right now. Like every industry, there is sort of a disruption, all thanks to AI. But AI is simply a system that is built to mimic and surpass human intelligence. And it's made up of various components like machine learning. Machine learning is a very popular type of algorithm that is applied. And what it does is it learns from a large set of data. It's trained extensively so that it's able to make predictions without being explicitly programmed to do so. We also have natural learning processing, which is basically you want the computers to be able to understand what the humans are saying and to also to pass on the information in an understandable manner. And also we have deep learning. So deep learning mimics the way we learn, the way the brain works but it uses artificial neural pathways. And so the relevance to pharmacy, remember all this data, like I know I'm not showing the volume, but it's a lot of data, right, that is being processed. And so artificial intelligence comes to help in processing this vast amount of data, looking for underlying things that you might not pick up immediately. Some things might not be as obvious instantly. And so that's one of the ways that AI shines. So AI, again, is not here to replace pharmacists. It's here to augment decision making power. In pharmacogenomics, in precision medicine dosing, AI is the silent partner, helping pharmacists to get it right the first time. And so this brings me to one of my key points. Whenever you hear the conversation around precision medicine, it's always told in the perspective of a physician. But pharmacists are just as important. I strongly believe, and the data shows that pharmacists are the missing link in precision medicine. You cannot have precision medicine without having the tailored medications or prescriptions that are based on pharmacogenomics, that are based on understanding the drug-gene interactions, that are based on understanding the drug-drug interactions. So it's very important that you understand that the future of drug discovery and personalized care will fail without pharmacists who understand and apply genomics, informatics, and AI. And we're going to be talking more about how we can, push each other to ensure that we're not slacking behind, regardless of our levels, whether you're a student or whether you have 20 years of professional experience. It's very important that we're able to work together to learn and push ourselves in order to thrive in this space. And so this is just a pictorial diagram of what I just said. Pharmacists are not the missing link. They are prescription partners in this precision medicine. And so now I'd like to go on a deeper dive into bioinformatics. Bioinformatics really is the first operational layer in precision medicine. Without it, vast data generated from sequencing remains unreadable. There are several tools that are used across the various, whether if it's on the physician sides or the pharmaceutical sides that require an understanding of bioinformatics, or at least understanding of what it does. So pharmacists must understand this layer to appreciate where personalized therapy truly begins, which is at the level of mutation calling, annotation, and biological interpretation. In the drug discovery pipeline, bioinformatics is already currently being used for various processes. For one, it's used in in target identification. So basically with matching genes and proteins to disease mechanisms. It's also used in biomarker discoveries to, like, for instance, with EGFR, KRAs, understanding mutations in lung cancer. So by understanding this layer gives pharmacists insights into how the therapy was developed and how it might succeed or fail. Also, if I'm talking too fast, I apologize. I know we started a little later, so I'm just trying to make sure that we make it in good time. The next slide, I'm going to be discussing from CRISPR to cancer care. If you're not aware, CRISPR is a new technology. It's a biotechnology that is used in gene editing, and it's showing promising signs, especially in sickle cell anemia, but also in cancer, right? Bioinformatics is very important as it powers CRISPR, in guiding the design, variant calling, and functional annotation. But if the data set lacks representation, the discovery will lack relevance. So remember I spoke about how despite having the largest genetic diversity, Africans contribute less than 2% of the genomic data. This is still a problem because discovery of mutation, because it impacts the discovery of mutations that are common to us, and as well as drug response predictions, like in the case of Chica, who I spoke about, where treatments don't work because they're not tailored to us. And so pharmacists within this context, especially here in Africa, must advocate. We must ask, for inclusive data, and understand the limitations of pharmacogenomics tests built on Western data sets. We must understand that, like there are limitations and we need to advocate if we want to improve the status quo. And so the pharmacist's role is really to advocate and to educate, to question, to allow for equitable testing tools. So bioinformatics, pharmacogenomics is really where bioinformatics and pharmacy meet. It's where they meet because you're translating a patient's DNA into personalized medication plans. So bioinformatics tools are, like I mentioned, are used in this process. Like some of them include tools like Genome Analysis Toolkit, which is used for variant calling. And if you don't know what variant calling is, it's basically the ability to identify variants in the DNA sequence in comparison to a reference to a reference genome. Some other tools are like Reactome for pathway analysis. And so as pharmacogenomics becomes standard, like in practice, especially here in the West, it's important that pharmacists must understand how to interpret drug-gene interactions. You must understand, so going beyond just like understanding what a specific drug is used for, you must understand whether the drug how it's going to interact with the gene, so that you can tailor prescription based on that, in order to counsel providers and patients. So remember how I spoke about with precision medicine, it's all about partnership. It's all about that multidisciplinary approach. Pharmacists must be able to, counsel providers as well as patients, based on all this data, like the pharmacogenomic data, as well as update, the treatment plans based on the insights drawn from this data. So pharmacogenomic alerts are already embedded in some CDSS systems. This is not common all around the world, but some advanced systems already allow for this data to be embedded, so it's part of the data stream. But without pharmacist engagement, these warnings are ignored or misunderstood. So pharmacists must be able to understand why, what this alerts, because CDSS, which I'll talk more about, it generates alerts, warning, like it flags potential drug-gene interactions or drug-drug interactions. So pharmacists must be there to be able to advocate, to understand what that is all about. Basically, you have to understand and have this in your mind that you're the final checkpoint between a mutation and a medication. So not the physician, not the nurses, not anyone else, but the pharmacist. You're the final checkpoint between the patient's mutation and the medication they take. So we have to ensure that bioinformatics does not stop at the research lab, but is also brought to the point of care. And so this slide, I'm going to talk briefly about how we're expanding the pipelines with bioinformatics. We have omics. So omics refers to extremely large data sets. They're just like extremely large data sets, and there are several types like genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics. And so bioinformatics allows high throughput omics. So it allows us to process these large data sets in order to enable rapid disease modeling and target identification. And remember, this is a very crucial step, especially in the drug discovery process, so that you can come up with drugs that are able to target these diseases. Of course, data integration from multiple sources. Bioinformatics also allows for integration from like the clinical, the environmental as well, to understand how all of this impact the genes, because they all impact the genome as a whole. And it helps reveal novel drug disease associations. Bioinformatics pipelines also accelerate preclinical phases from in silico screening to biomarker validation. And the pharmacist's role in this case is to really understand and to really bridge the insights from bioinformatics to therapeutic decisions and clinical trial eligibility. So just like, like most things in life, the application of bioinformatics does not come without any challenges. And some of the major challenges are things I already mentioned. I've said things like, or I'll start with data privacy and consent. So here in the US, we have HIPAA, and HIPAA is basically a health data law, and it's extensive. It's a framework, and that guides the way we deal with patients' data at all levels, at research level, so in the lab setting, but the clinical level, and basically in every setting. And so I know Nigeria has its own health data laws, but they're not as extensive and they're not as helpful, especially if you're building a framework around this. And so it's important that we advocate for a more extensive, a broader data privacy and consent framework, right, that will allow us to tailor this genetic data and use this genetic data in a way that is ethical and respectful, because genetic data is sensitive and we must respect biology. Also, the lack of diverse genomic data continues to pose as a major problem. Remember how I spoke about how despite having the largest genetic diversity, Africans still contribute less than 2%. Less than 2%, that's an insane amount if you actually think about it, to the genomic database. And so it's very important that we advocate for ourselves, because again, there are mutations that are unique to us, and we must ensure that the drugs that are being designed and being created are tailored for us. Validation gaps exist because bioinformatics is very computational, so it's very important to balance it with wet lab. Although it does speed up the process, it's still very important to know that the human body is extremely complex, and we need to be mindful and respectful of that process. Data silos. This basically refers to fragmented data points or data bases. So, for instance, even if Chika was able to go for genomic testing, the data might not be able to reach the clinician, or maybe it reached the physician. This data might not have reached the pharmacist at the point of dispensing, and that could pose as a huge problem. So we need to make sure that this data is not just fragmented, but there is a seamless integration and a seamless flow of data from from the genomic testing to the point of care, which is where like the physicians and the pharmacists exist. Access and affordability continue to remain a huge problem. So you think about how, and this is worldwide, right? So we need to like advocate, especially like to tailor policies and funding around these processes to help make it achievable and affordable for most people. We don't want to widen the gap with people from underserved communities that may not have access to the resources. Of course, like misuse of predictive models exists. So the major, with all of these challenges in mind, we need to think of them as challenges that can be overcome with the right planning and the right implementation. So just because we can sequence and predict does not always mean we should. Ethics must guide innovation. That's just how I'd like to end this. And remember how I spoke about how bioinformatics is really that I guess the basis of precision medicine. I like to think of health informatics as the connector, because it's what brings the technology that allows this flow of data from point A to point B. Health informatics is extremely broad. It's not just a data storage, it's a decision support. It bridges raw data from various sources and real world care decisions that could, especially in the pharmacy settings. So it allows pharmacists to see beyond the pill. The same way it allows physicians to see beyond the sickness, it allows pharmacists to see beyond the pill, as they understand, how a patient's comorbidities and lab values and even genetics affects drug response. So CDS, or clinical decision support systems, powered by informatics, are able to flag dangerous drug-gene or drug-drug interactions, helping prevent adverse events. With the integration of pharmacogenomic data into EHRs, this even provides a more richer understanding. So pharmacists are no longer guessing, right? They're using precision at the point of care. They're using precision tools and knowledge at the point of care. And so ultimately, this empowers evidence-based personalization, where pharmacists collaborate with other, precision partners like the physicians, the nurses, and bioinformaticians. So health informatics, like I said, it's really the connector. It's a critical infrastructure that connects the dots between a patient's genome, their clinical history, so all the sicknesses, all the ailments they may have had, all the medications they've been on, or the ones they're currently on, and even social determinants of health, because we know all of this can affect the patient's response to the drugs. And some of these social determinants of health are environmental data, exposure data, like air pollution or air quality, geospatial data, poverty, social data, like their housing condition, where they live, access to resources. All of these are very important information and allow for tailoring care that is direct and beneficial for the patient. And so with this connected data, we can build predictive models that identify who is most at risk and tailor interventions accordingly. CDS, like I mentioned, take those predictions and deliver actionable recommendations. So you can think of it as a helper. So CDS is not here to replace you. I know sometimes we get a bit apprehensive when we hear of technologies that are doing what you're supposed to do, but you need to see them as a helper. When you think about the insane amount of data that is coming from multiple streams, and then you think about the specific patient, like let's just imagine as a community pharmacist, or even a pharmacist at in a hospital setting, you have 20 patients that you're seeing in an hour, or maybe 15 patients realistically. And there's no way you'll be able to basically look at this patient's profile, like their entire chart, and understand the pharmacogenomics and understand their health data and the environmental data. So it's very important that we use technology to identify and flag, like, oh, hey, pharmacists, I'm just going to use it. Pharmacist Adeniyi, there's going to be a potential drug gene interaction, or there's going to be a potential drug interaction. So maybe we try something else. It also helps to prevent like with duplicity. So sometimes like maybe a patient might already be taking Panadol, but then they have like paracetamol, so there's no point in taking both medications. Another very cool aspect of or useful aspect of health informatics is also the ability to build predictive models with all this data. So you're able to identify who is most at risk and tailor interventions accordingly. And this process of doing this is known as risk stratification. And so let's think about the research I did with Baylor on severe childhood malnutrition, understand the genetic predispositions in severe childhood malnutrition. I know like we can look at communities and say, okay, maybe these communities are more at risk of developing, or kids in this community have a higher chance of developing this disease. So what can we do? This is where, you can bring in your preventive medicine. It's all part of precision medicine. So you're able to maybe supply supplements that could help build their health, build their immune system, to prevent them from getting these illnesses. Sorry, give me a second, I'm so sorry. Okay. Thank you. So real-time informatics systems can monitor patient data streams. Think about wearable devices. So for instance, a diabetic patient might need to, or maybe a patient who has issues due to excessive weight. They might need to, the physician and the pharmacist might want up-to-date data to be able to treatment regimen. And so they can get data from, like your Apple Watch or your Fitbit. It tracks like the number of calories you burn in a day. All of this data, or other remote patient monitoring devices as well. All of this data can also be sent to the patient's EHR to give a more comprehensive, to get a more comprehensive overview of their healthcare. Of their health. And so, like I mentioned, CDS, think of it as a support. It's not there to replace you. We can only do so much as humans. We do have our limitations, especially when you're dealing with multiple patients, multiple cases at once. Remember, the community pharmacist or the pharmacist at the hospital might be overwhelmed. They, due to being overwhelmed, they could miss some of these things that they should already be looking out for. So clinical decision support systems synthesize diverse patient data, like the labs, the meds, diagnosis, to generate tailored alerts and guidance for care teams. So that way you're not left in the dark. I know sometimes you don't even have a break. You're from one patient to another. So it can be hard to sometimes keep track. And at the end of the session, you're like, oh my God, I forgot I could have also said this, or I could have checked for this. So to avoid those mistakes, we have CDS coming to support. And so this improves, drug safety, as it flags like drug interactions. And in case I care about very deeply, drug gene interactions. it flags duplications, like I mentioned earlier, like a patient who might be taking a drug that is similar to another one, it can flag that duplication to avoid that process. It reduces the risk of adverse drug reactions. Of course, CDSS is a helper tool. It doesn't replace your role as a pharmacist. You're the one who controls, but a lot of this is just like, hey, pharmacist Adeniyi, take this into account, or I think this might be a potential issue. Let's make sure that we kind of pay attention to that. And CDSS allows us to also incorporate driven insights. So remember how I spoke about pharmacogenomics and how it really, helps us understand drug-gene interactions. CDSS is good at processing on all of that to help us better tailor the prescription to that purpose. So you think of yourself as a key user. A lot of times in conversations, whenever we hear clinical decision support systems, it's always in regards to the physicians. But this is a very important tool, not just for physicians, but also for pharmacists to be able to get a better understanding of the patient's health. And CDSS is also, it also fosters and professional collaboration. So remember, I've been saying, think of yourself as a precision partner. It's a multidisciplinary effort between, like physicians, between all the pharmacists, between all these various healthcare or clinicians in general. And so CDSS allows for that collaboration. So scaling personalized care does not mean sacrificing individuality. It means using health informatics to identify what works for groups of patients and then applying it strategically at the individual level. So we can, like, remember the case with the example I gave with a child who has severe childhood malnutrition. We can take the data from that specific community and then apply it to a specific individual without sacrificing their individuality. So like, okay, if in this specific neighborhood, patients there or people there are more susceptible to a certain disease, so we're able to tailor care to that community. And that would, of course, improve the health of people in that community. Clinical systems today are capable of integrating genomic data, medication histories, allergies, which I've mentioned, and lifestyle factors to guide therapy in real time. So this is the promise of precision medicine made actionable. So precision medicine, and I will talk more about in a future slide, it's not just a buzzword. It's an actionable word. And health informatics also powers learning health systems. So I will talk more about that in AI, but basically think of it as a loop. Environments where every health informatics allows for the system to be able to learn from the genomic data and to continue to learn and learn and learn. And as it continues to learn, it continues to improve on itself. It continues to improve on the insights that it provides to both the pharmacists and the physicians. So pharmacists in this from being drug dispensers to precision medicine facilitators, guiding care teams with nuanced recommendations based on deep informatics. And so, like I mentioned, with everything, of course, there are challenges that need to be overcome to allow for a seamless integration. Interoperability gaps still remain. Remember how I spoke about the article where where every scientist sort of has their own language, and this affects the way they're able to communicate with each other. And so we need to ensure that we're building these standards that allow for a seamless understanding across all boards, so that we know that if we're referring to a specific process or a specific pathway, everyone understands what that is. And I know like HL7 fire is one of the more common ones right now, but seeing how that continues to evolve. Standardization is key, which is what I spoke about. But another major point with interoperability on its own deals with the transfer of data from point A to point B. So if the data from the genomic testing site if we want to send testing results from a genomic testing site to the physician, we want it to go seamlessly, and we want this data we want it to be actionable once it's received. And so we need to make sure that this system is able to send this in a secure way that allows the end users make use of it in the way it's intended to. Also very important to note that there is a global shortage of professionals trained in clinical informatics. So this is, I guess, a call to anyone and to everyone really to find ways you can train in this space, as to it will allow pharmacists to take an active role, and there are several ways you can train, and we'll talk more about that in a future slide. And this is it's also very important to note that in low resource settings, like a lot of communities in Nigeria, many facilities lack electronic systems altogether. So this conversation might seem a bit abstract, but infrastructure investment must accompany policy reforms. So we need to advocate that there is need for infrastructure investment to basically overhaul the system. And one thing I like to think about, especially with Nigeria, is we have second movers advantage. Second movers advantage is basically the advantage you get from doing something after someone else has done it. So we can learn from societies that have done it already, learn what worked, what didn't work, because in implementing all of this, there's been lots of issues. Here in the US, with the implementation of technology, it has widened the gap for, between underserved communities, so people who may not have access to Wi-Fi and gadgets and those who do, and that could worsen health outcomes. So if we're implementing this in Nigeria, how can we do this in a way that doesn't widen that gap, that sees every human as worthy of having access to these tailored remedies? So ethics cannot be an afterthought, which is why I said we need to advocate for something similar to HIPAA that is built for us. You remember HIPAA, the health data framework, the health data law. We need to ensure that whatever we're building, there is respect, there is consent, there is security, there is privacy, so that we're able to build systems and build the trust of patients in the systems in the process. And so while we've spoken about bioinformatics as this layer that really gave birth to precision medicine, and we've spoken about health informatics as the connector that allows us to take the data you're pulling from multiple insights and bring it to the point of care. One very powerful innovation is the use of the application of artificial intelligence in this space. So AI really is the engine that brings bioinformatics and health informatics into clinical reality. Traditional methods struggle with volume and complexity of data. Remember, there's multiple data streams, and a lot of this data are humongous. And there is no way we can process this in a good amount of time without having an engine really that is built for processing this. And this is where AI comes in. For example, AI can analyze millions of data points, whether if it's genomics, whether if it's imaging from labs, whether if it's EHRs, to predict whether a patient will respond to a cancer drug. So it takes it even smarter, right? It makes the system work in a smarter way. Based on data it has learned from, it's able to predict whether this drug will work. It can look at like the patient's entire data and compare it to the vast amount of data it's been trained on, and say, hey, this data or parts of this data look pretty similar to this other case where there was a potential drug or drug-gene interaction. So why don't we pay attention to this? This is where AI comes in. So as pharmacists, it's crucial to understand that these tools allow you to better interpret and understand how treatment is recommended and advocate for patients. Because at the end of the day, as a clinician, your role really is to be an advocate for the patient's health. So AI is revolutionizing every stage of drug discovery. Tools like deep learning. Remember, I spoke about deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning, where that works with artificial neural pathways in how it learns. So this deep learning and generative models are designing molecules with specific properties from scratch. So instead of spending years and years and lots of money in the lab to get these perfect molecules, we're able to do this now with AI. AI is also very useful in target identification. So ensuring, and this is especially important in diseases that are as complex as cancer, right? Because we're moving away from the non-tailored traditional approach like chemotherapy to more tailored, targeted therapy, which would involve target identification. And so AI is very helpful in this process, as we no longer have to rely on wet lab experiments, which again can take many years, as AI can sift through omics data. Remember, omics refers to large, like millions of data sets, to identify promising targets. Pharmacists must understand these shifts because the therapies they'll be dispensed in the future are most likely going to be AI informed. So you need to understand that a lot of the the medications you'll be administering in the future would probably come from AI designs, AI molecules that were designed, or targets that were identified, all thanks to AI sifting through multiple data sets. So remember, I've spoken about clinical decision support systems as this tool that help you understand exactly what it helps flag for things that could be going wrong. It basically gives an overview of all the data that's incorporated into the electronic health record. Remember the EHR, which is the repository of all this data. It's a live digital repository. So AI-driven CDS takes it a top notch, right? It changes how we make clinical decisions, shifting from a reactive perspective to a more proactive care. And this is where things like and proactive care is where things like preventive medicine comes in. These tools, like this AI driven CDS tools, are able to combine structured data. So think about lab values with unstructured data. So like the physician's notes to deliver actionable insights. And so pharmacists on the front lines of this transformation must be trained to understand AI generated recommendations and flag potential misfires. So of course, like the AI is not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to have it right. So it's very important that the pharmacists are trained in order to flag potential misfires. And this tool is especially like vital in oncology. Cancer in general is extremely complex. And so choosing the right therapy can depend on multiple variables. And so if you're looking at multiple data points to tailor the care, CDS makes it much more actionable and realistic, given the time constraint you have, because again, you're dealing with multiple patients and you also have your own stuff going on at the side. So we're harnessing technology in this way to improve the system. And like I mentioned, and I'll continue to mention, because I do think as a pharmacist, you're who practices in Nigeria or in anywhere in Africa or anywhere in the world, really, you're Black, you must advocate for our data to be incorporated into this set. So we mentioned like Africans have the largest genetic diversity in the world, but we contribute less than 2% to the genomic database. A lot of AI is being traced on those. And you can imagine that, of course, this would lead to a bias, right? Because these insights might not be the most applicable to us. So it's very, this obviously would lead to unequal care, right? Like in the case of Chika, we see that the medication doesn't work on her. So pharmacists must question the source and diversity of these sets. You must question, like, where is this coming from? Where was this study done? How was this tool built? How was this platform built? I know you're seeing all these amazing things because trust me, consultants, when they're talking about all of these technologies, they know how to sell it to you. And they're doing a good job, right? But it's very important that you question, like, where was this trained? So that we're able to build systems that allow for us to have a good have drugs that work in us and on us. Also, privacy and governance. I will continue to talk about HIPAA because I think it's extremely incredible. As I mentioned, HIPAA is the American Health Data Law / framework. And it allows us to be great stewards of patients' health data. And with AI, things could go awry. So it's very important that we are building, we have an extensive and elaborate framework, some similar to HIPAA, that would allow us to design AI tools that would work for us. Also, very important that we have at least it's very important that pharmacists are ethical in the literacy in AI. So I know sometimes it's very easy to kind of like remain on your own and say, oh, this has nothing to do with me. I'm not a computer scientist. I'm not an AI or a machine learning engineer. But it's very important to have a good understanding so you can advocate for yourself, because no one else will be able to do that. So it includes understanding algorithmic fairness. So you want to ensure that the algorithms that are being used are fair. and that includes like the data. Like I've spoken a lot about that, and I will continue to speak about that. We need to make sure the data that is being used are fair. The algorithm that is being used is fair. We need to understand to advocate for transparency and responsibility, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with people's lives, and we must ensure that we are paying attention to everything and leaving no stone unturned. And so this final slide refers to the loop I was talking about earlier. So I like to think of this as a feedback loop. So with when the systems are integrated in a way that is seamless, you know, the bioinformatics, and pharmacogenomics, I'm grouping them as one, they push forth this genomic data into the EHR. The EHR is getting data, that's in the health informatics side, it's getting data from multiple sources. And then AI is learning, it's helping this data, it's learning from this data and improving its recommendations. So as you're tailoring the treatments to the patients, based on the patient outcomes, the AI is able to learn to say, okay, maybe this didn't work this time, so maybe there was something else. What could I have done better, or what could I have recommended better? So at the end of the day, we're building a smarter system, not to replace us, but to help us to make more accurate decisions. I did not mention it in this slides, but one of the leading causes of death here in the US are due to medical errors. And so this is very important, right? And these medical errors occur, it occurs in various ways. You know, a lot of it might be due to technology, or to the misuse of technology or recommendations. But a lot of it is due to mistakes, right? Humans are not perfect. You know, sometimes we're tired, you know, and you can imagine when you're attending to a patient and you're tired, they might not get the best of you at the time. And this could also cost them their lives, or, you know, they could be hurt severely. And so that's why it's very important that we're training this AI and building this system that allows for for it to continue to get better and better, so that we can prescribe drugs that work. And so now it's time for precision medicine, which is really the meat of this presentation or this discussion. Precision medicine is not just a buzzword. I know we all understand or have at least some basic understanding of what precision medicine is. Whenever I hear the word, or whenever I'm in discussions around precision medicine, it's always around with the physicians. But pharmacists, like I mentioned, are a very key component of precision medicine. You know, two patients with the same diagnosis may need different treatments, you know, based on their genome, their lifestyle, and their data profile. So that's why precision medicine is necessary. It's why patients like Chika, for instance, the treatment could work on Chika, but might not work on another person with similar diagnosis. And so this is where the three pillars really shine. The three pillars I've spoken about. So bioinformatics, health informatics, and AI, this is where they come to play. And so pharmacists must understand how and why treatments work differently for each patient in order to see more positive results. So think of this system as a precision engine. This framework, the bioinformatics, you're pulling from this at the molecular level, the health informatics that is incorporating all these important data points, including like environmental data, and AI that is the engine that is powering all of this to make it smarter and more equitable. So think of it as a precision engine where each component has a role. Bioinformatics decodes the biology. You know, it identifies targets. Health informatics ensures that those insights are accessible and actionable at the point of care. You know, it's one thing to have the insights, right? But we need to make sure that it is actionable, that at the point of care, when the physician or when the pharmacist are interacting with the patient, they have this information available to them, so they're able to make more precise, more tailored recommendations. AI accelerates what's possible, you know, with analyzing this vast amount of patient data. You know, again, I will continue to mention just so we can think about the scale of this data. We have multiple data sets. We have very large data point, like extremely large, and then we have several patients. So that's why we need AI to make this smarter. And so the most critical role for this precision engine to work is the pharmacist. Remember how I said, think of yourself as the final point between a mutation and a medicine? This is where you stand. You have to understand those drug gene interactions, you know, and only the pharmacist can translate this triad of, amongst other things, right? But only the pharmacist can translate this triad of data into human-centered care. So whether if it's adjusting dose based on whatever factors, educating on a new targeted therapy, or flagging a clinical trial, the pharmacist is really the bridge between the insight and the intervention. And so this is not just some theory, it's actually happening right now in pilot programs, in academic centers and in other spaces. So like I mentioned, precision medicine is not something of the future. It's not a buzzword. It's something that is already here, and it's changing the way we deliver care. It's changing the way we treat patients. Unlike traditional models that focus on, like just giving this generic, non-tailored, one-size-fits-all care to everyone or to every patient, this is a more tailored approach, right? Based on genetic, environmental, and lifestyle data. It incorporates much more than the usual. I know when you go to your physician, there's they will ask, oh, do you have a family history of this? But sometimes it's even like much more like some of this. You might not have a family history of that, but you might still be genetically predisposed to it, or you might not have a known family history, but might genetically be predisposed to a specific disease. And so that's why we need this framework to work. Where we have the bioinformatics insights, the health informatics at the point of care, and AI, as it helps us to truly understand and truly practice precision medicine. And so the convergence of these three pillars makes this possible. So remember Chika, who I spoke about earlier. What if the system had worked for her? What if she was able to undergo or get the genomic testing at an affordable price point? What if the data insights drawn from there, the pharmacogenomic insights, the clinical genomic insights, and other insights were able to seamlessly be integrated into a pipeline, into her electronic health pipeline, and sent to her physicians and her pharmacists at the point of care? This would have ultimately changed the way her life had gone. When we think about diseases like cancer is expensive. I know this is not a discussion on cancer, but cancer is extremely expensive for several reasons, right? But we're focusing on the finances. Imagine paying for something so expensive over and over and over, and it's not working. That could also kill the patient faster than the disease. So access to precision medicine is not just about science, it's about justice. And as pharmacists in resource-constrained regions, this could also play a life-changing role. And so historically, pharmacists were seen primarily as dispensers, the final checkpoint before medication reaches the patients. But the future demands more. Pharmacists are now called to be interpreters of complex data and to advocate for tailored care. Health IT tools, like I mentioned, like EHR and CDS, or EHR integrated pharmacogenomic modules, clinical decision support systems, and wearable derived data all offer informed insights. And they're only impactful if they're integrated in a way that is seamless, right? And they're only impactful when they have someone who can truly understand this data. And that is where the pharmacist steps in. So think of yourself not just as a pharmacist, but as a precision navigator that translates these algorithms into real-world treatment choices. So we want to move the patients from asking, what should I take, to what is right for me? This would continue to allow the patients to build trust in the system and of course, improve the outcomes for the patients. And so I have here, this chart, your role in the future of pharmacy. Pharmacists are no longer, like I mentioned, just dispensers of medication. You're interpreters of this complex data, right? You're a guide in personalized care and stewards of health innovation. And so it's important that you stay informed. You have to be committed to being a lifelong learner, because the world is changing, and the way the pharmacy is being delivered around the world, or the care is being delivered around the world, is changing. And so it's very important that you grow in the informatics space, and this can be done through pursuing certifications, attending informatics conferences to learn, or even AI conferences. Like recently, I was at an AI Expo conference in DC, where I was learning more about the ways the industry is moving, especially within the biomedical and the medical space, with the use of AI. So to attend those conferences in general, whether virtually or in person, to understand, so that you're not left out, right? Because the pharmacists of tomorrow will not be be the same pharmacists of today, in the sense that they would have to be updated in all their skill sets. So you must engage in interdisciplinary collaborations. So whether if it's at the university level, like with other departments, whether if it's with the bioinformatics department, whether if it's with the computer faculty, or computer science faculty, or the health informatics, to build solutions. The solutions for today's problems cannot just be from a single point of view. We need that multidisciplinary team-based effort. And so that's why it's important to start, challenging yourself and start building those connections. And, even at the faculty level, it could involve like introducing informatics into the curriculum so that students are trained in these topics, right? And also trained with this skill set, so that when they come out to the world and as the world continues to evolve, they don't feel like they're left behind. Equity starts with data that reflects our community. So as pharmacists, you must continue to advocate that our data is included in this genomic sets, so that as we continue to build these tools, we're building them for us as well, with us in mind. As we continue to design drugs, we're designing them for us in mind as well. Pursuing collaborations with other departments, like I mentioned, and really just having that multidisciplinary approach. It's very important that you see yourself as one who is shaping the system and not just playing a passive role. I would like to end with this, statement. The pharmacist of tomorrow is in your classroom, your clinic, or your mirror. So basically, you could be the pharmacist of tomorrow. They could be your classmate, or they could be in your clinic working with you. So you can decide for yourself whether or not, or if you want to be the pharmacist of tomorrow. I have a QR code on the screen. I'm going to leave this screen on for about a minute. And basically what I'm asking is that you please scan the code. It's just a simple question asking about the ways you think you'll be able to contribute to changing the pharmacy, the way pharmacy is administered in Nigeria. Remember, we have to do this for ourselves, for our country, so that we're able to build a system that works for us, and we're able to also lead the rest of Africa in this charge. So I'm going to leave this on the screen, and on the next slide, I will give appreciations. But if you have any questions, please feel free to send them into the chat, and I'll be able to read them. So I'm leaving this up for a minute, and I believe I will post a link on to the group chat, so you're able to scan. So you're able to click directly into the link.
Okay, Precious, are you done?
Hi, no, I'm almost done. The link will be posted in the
Okay.
chat. And before I end, I would like to really acknowledge and appreciate everyone who made this possible. First of all, I want to thank God for the opportunity. But I would also like to thank the Dean of Pharmaceutical Society Sciences at the University of Jos, Professor B.B. Bukar. I'd also love to appreciate the Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Dr. Mrs. Ohemu. I'd love to also appreciate the immediate past Dean of the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Sciences, Professor Unguluka. I'd like to also, of course, appreciate Professor Ogaji, who has been very helpful in this process, who was the former dean, as well as the chairman of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, Plateau State Chapter, and all the members of PSN. Thank you so much, Dr. Domjul, as well as the webinar planning committee at the Faculty of Pharmaceutical Sciences. I want to thank all the academic staff, Professor Para, president and members of PANS, and all the participants from all across Nigeria. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. And if you have any questions, please feel free to send in your questions. Also, there is a QR code for attendance. I believe there will be a certificate of participation sent out. So please send your questions to the chat, and you can also scan the QR code to add to fill out the form for participation. Thank you.
I know some people are telling us, I was not that I forgot to give you this to help us see, because we can't just ask every student or whatever to see if you can only see.
Okay, Precious, thank you so much. Thank you. We are grateful for this insight that you have shared with us on bioinformatics, health informatics, and artificial intelligence and its place in pharmacy. I think all that Precious had said and shared with us today is self-explanatory, but should we have any questions like he had said, we should ask those questions and then he will respond to them. I want to appreciate all those that joined us from Napa National, because we posted this on the platform. I saw Professor Kola Mustafa, apart from Professor Azuka Opara from Benin, from Ilori, and others that I can't see them now on the screen. Now, let me give this time to our amiable dean to just say a word before we round up. Professor B.B. Booker, it is at this instance that we're able to host this, so I think you should say something to us. Sir? Okay, no, okay, question. Okay, for those who are on site, if you have questions, Precious, can we send you the questions from the on site?
Yes, please.
Yeah, those of us that are here in the classroom, can we ask questions? Precious.
Oh, I have a question, which yeah. So I would say, like, as a young pharmacist, it's important to just like learn, figure out exactly the way you want to contribute. Like, if you the setting you want to work in. So if you want to work in industry, what does that look like, or the hospital, and what are the tools, the informatics tools that you would use in that space? I think that would help guide the way you learn, the way you go about learning. And also, like, maybe consider postgraduate programs, whether if it's, fellowships or a master's or a PhD. Those are also ways to get fully immersed in the space and learn those tools hands-on.
I believe you have answered all the questions posed to you so far. So let's give this time to our Dean, Professor B.B. Booker, to say a word or two. Before those who are on site, we have our students, staff, and other people that are here in the class participating. So they may have some questions that we will have to relate to you to answer them. Precious. Over to
Thank you.
Thank you, our guest presenter, Mr. Precious Adeniyi. I think he deserves a round of applause from us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Because I know we were going to get the best from the US through our own. And we are not disappointed by what we have received this afternoon. It was not only the faculty, we did it in collaboration with PSN on the Plateau. I don't know whether they are represented here, so that they can join me immediately after my remark. They can as well give their own remark. The presentation was very timely, very, very timely. For those following track of events in Nigeria, early this week, the Minister of Education had launched an initiative called the Federal Government Diaspora Bridge Initiative to connect global Nigeria expertise. Now we know Precious is based in the US, and he has shared with us his expertise or knowledge on current events. Because if you Google top 10 researches in current healthcare, most of them will fall under what he has given us. So are we not blessed? We are so blessed because it has, or it will stimulate us, both as staff and as students, to do our best, and not only to maintain the tempo, but to also increase upon it. So this is a big challenge to all of us, even as we have received the knowledge. Because healthcare generally is facing a lot of challenges, such that scientists are now going through genetic editing, which he mentioned some of them. Many disorders, drugs cannot cure them. We can only maintain them or manage them. So with genetic editing, as he has mentioned some of them, I think we have gained a lot. And for us as a faculty, our doors are open to all knowledgeable speeches or aspects of life, particularly as it relates to healthcare. And that is why I say we are blessed this afternoon through the presentation of Mr. Precious. Parents would also strive to do our best to give you what you need for the future. So with these few remarks, I am gladdened because the attendance is very, very encouraging. And all of us that have found time to attend physically and even online, may God bless all of us. Thank you, and God bless you. So PSM, if they have their representative here, they can say a word or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. I thought we were going to clap for him now. Okay, thank you, everyone. Everyone online, I can see Professor Luka, and I saw Professor Dalem Dafam, the DG, and who again, and many others. Too numerous to mention. Thank you for being part of it. Precious, once again, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us. We want to put an application to call further knowledge with us as the need arises. Okay, so the Q&A and the discussion is there. Is there any other thing you want to say? Are there questions from those of us here? Yes, questions. Precious, so please, can you pay attention to the questions?
Yes, sir. I can't really hear.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So we came from the field. Good morning.
Okay, The question is being fed into the system for you to respond.
So I don't know if you could hear me.
I can hear you.
So can you hear me?
My water?
No.
Yeah,
good.
I can hear you.
Okay, so I have a bunch of questions based on what you said. First off, you talked about the databases that fed data to the AI, yeah? So have there been any form of indicators or biomarkers for the cancers, for something like cancers, or biomarkers for the likelihood of drug resistance for drugs of importance? That's number one. Did you get that?
Yes.
Good. And then secondly, if there are those biomarkers within the database, do you think that an integration into the governmental policies to require genetic data to be taken at birth as a necessity as like immunization could be done? That's number two. Did you get that?
Yes.
Okay, number three. Also, how feasible is integration of that genetic data collection in third world countries like Nigeria as compared to the US?
Okay.
And four, in the US, what is the means by which that genetic data you said was accessed? How is it stored? And is it accessed by everyone, like all healthcare practitioners, or is there a specific level of access before you're able to reach that?
Thank you so much for the questions. Very
Yeah.
amazing questions. I'll start from the last one. It's not accessible to only to anyone that doesn't have access to. So one thing about HIPAA, which is the health data law I spoke about, or health data framework, the only people that have access to data are those who have the permission. But in the case of things like genetic data, especially going to like genomic testing centers, the data is de-identified. So the patients don't have like any information that could be linked back to the patient is completely removed. So their names, their address, anything that could link back to the patient is completely removed. It's totally anonymous so that no one, has access. It's part of like the HIPAA processing laws. The third question I believe you asked was how feasible it is in a resource constrained country like Nigeria. I think I would like to say where there's a will, there's a way. Primarily, there needs to be funding, it's public-private partnerships for this. So in Ghana, there's a company called Yemachi Biotech. They're a precision oncology company, and I forgot to mention them earlier, but it's a very amazing company, and I'll actually be speaking with the founder next week, and I'll if you care to read about that, because I'm going to write about it, it's on my blog. I can send you the blog. But there are companies like that exist on the continent and in West Africa specifically, and so it's working together with the healthcare system, with the broader healthcare system, to ensure that those data is integrated into the EHRs. And that would involve like public funding. So for instance, it's some of the easiest places to start with might be with government hospitals where the government supplies the funds, because private hospitals might not have the money, because all of this costs a lot of money, an enormous amount of money. And so it's easier to start with government hospitals that already have like EHR systems and collaborate with the with companies like Yemachi Biotech in Accra, Ghana. And Yemachi is also very passionate about increasing the percentage of African genomic data, because we have the largest diversity, genetic diversity. I believe the second question was, I don't quite remember the second question. I remember the last two. Do you mind repeating the second question? Oh, I do remember. You were asking about whether the law should. Yeah, you asked about the law.
Yeah.
I think there could be some ethical issues with regards to that. That's where I'm going to leave it at. Like, I think it's something it's a fair point that could be brought up, but could be debated. So we have all these discussions all the times about like what is ethical, and people are very weary about releasing their data, right? Especially from birth, it could lead to unintended consequences. So ensuring that even if there's a system that, even if that ever happens, or even if we ever get to that, there are strong laws that kind of guide the way the data is used. So ensuring that this data cannot be sold, it can't be manipulated, or it can be used for purposes outside of the intended purpose, right? So there needs to be, like, again, remember I spoke about HIPAA, the health data law. There needs to be some type of framework similar to HIPAA that allows for the guidance of how this data that is stored is used. And then the first question, I do remember, which is you asked.
I asked about the databases that feed data to the AI, and then I asked if there has any research that has shown any form of indicators or biomarkers for cancers you get, and likelihood of drug resistance. Yeah, if that can be picked out and then have for drugs of importance, can that be marked already? And is it already fed into the database, or is it something that is going to happen in the future, or is it something that already exists?
Okay, very good question. There is already data that exists, and there's already situations like that that exist where they're able to identify this data from the omics. I mean, identify these genetic markers from the omics data. I do not have specific examples. I thought I had one on my slide, but I'm looking back and I don't. And you're asking if it's going to be able to, how it's fed into the AI. So the AI tools are specific to the companies, right? They're tailored for the specific use cases.
Okay.
So they're building the solutions based on that. And even with when you think about like big pharma, so like the pharmaceutical industries, they already have their AI labs that are working on this to better identify the pathways. So this is not something of the future. It's actually currently happening now.
Okay.
Thank you. And there's a question from the, oh, sorry.
Okay, in the last question I asked, in the US, how is the genetic data stored and accessed? And right now, you just mentioned that each of big pharma companies have their separate AI labs. So is there like an integration for all, or they have separate databases for different situations?
So there are genetic banks in general, right? To answer the I feel like I'm answering two questions, but every company has their AI lab for proprietary data. That's very important to companies. They want to be able to guard their algorithms, and they want to guide their data. So it's not really shared. You're asking how genetic data is stored in the US. There are genomic banks. There are, like in the EHRs, like I mentioned, some EHRs allow for genomic data to be incorporated into them. For companies like traditional companies like Guardant Health, which I mentioned, they also access to genomic data as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your questions. I never got your name.
Amali.
Thank you so much, Amali. Very, very, very great questions. There's a question in the chat. Are there any promising initiatives in Africa where bioinformatics and AI are being used together to address patient-specific health issues like in infectious disease or personalized medicine? Still in the early stages. Like I mentioned, the Amachi Tech, they're also incorporating AI into their processes, but they're focused specifically on cancer. So not quite an infectious disease, but there are still like early stage solutions that are being built incorporating AI into bioinformatics pipelines in Africa. Any more questions or even a comment? I'm open to comments. You can just give a comment or something like, I want us to kind of like talk about, or maybe to think about the ways we can, like something, it doesn't even have to be a tool that already exists, but maybe something that you can contribute, maybe something you can build on your own as you collaborate with other departments.
Any comments? Okay, Precious, just one more question from the on-site, and I think we should be done after that.
Thank you.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
My question is, in the collection of data, especially in Africa, to avoid bias for the AI models, is there any way we could learn from maybe mistakes or errors or pitfalls in places like the US to make our data more comprehensive and to avoid mistakes generally?
Yes, very good question and very important point. I would say there's a lot to learn. I might not go into all the specifics, but one of the major things is to ensure that this data is real. I know right now we're in an era where you can also like generate data based on several factors. But so ensuring that we're collecting from various data points. So it needs to be basically an outreach program going across, like, let's use a country like Nigeria. So it's not just connected from Abuja, but it's collected from all parts, from young, from old, from men, from women. So it's not, so that way we're able to have a more diverse population group that we can draw insights from. Also from East Africa, from West Africa. So not just collecting from maybe Nigeria and saying, oh, that represents the entire Africa, right? So we want to make sure we're collecting from North Africa as well, from Central, from all these regions to make sure that there is a representation. Thank you so much for that question. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed being here today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Precious. Thank you, everyone. I will dedicate to close out, but obviously not around. So this brings us to the close of this session's webinar. If there is need to call us back again, we will do so, but not today. So thank you, everyone who has taken time to be here physically, and for those of you that joined us online. Once again, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.